My name is Tracey.
I'm Richard.
And we adopted a sibling group of 4 youngsters 7 years ago. I lose track of time,
Yes,
trouble.
17.
At the time that we adopted the children, they were 21 months, 3, and we have twin boys that were 5. We have 2 girls and 2 boys. And this is our adoption story, I suppose. Well, we weren't able to actually have our own family. I'd had a lot of gynae complications, and basically there was nothing they could do to put me right. I'd got a friend that had already adopted 3 children. Then she was fortunate to have one of her own. So they've got 4. And she was a really, really good encouragement and a great help to us when we were going through the adoption process. And it was a way of completing our family. They're our kids, they just arrived differently. I think my advice to anybody that's doing the adoption, going through the adoption process would be keep a grip of where you want to get to, not what you're going through. Just remember that you want to achieve having your own family and keep that in focus, because people will put obstacles in your way to make sure that you're as determined as you are to perhaps make sure you do mean what you were hoping to accomplish, because it's not everybody that starts off on the adoption journey that completes it. We had a tough time, but we don't give in easily, I'm afraid. When we started our adoption journey, we didn't actually know how many children we wanted to be considered for, so our social worker asked us for a number to put down on paper. And we hadn't got a clue. So we said 3, because we felt that 3 would probably cover every eventuality. Well, as it turned out, it didn't, because we ended up with 4. And people just used to say to me, "Well, Tracey, how many are you hoping to have?" And once we'd got our family in mind and we were looking into having who are now our children, we used to say 4, and they just say, well, they look at me like I got 2 heads. How many? What do you want 4 for? Well, it just seems the right thing to do. From the minute I clapped eyes on the photograph of our family, I felt they were the right children for us. I would say go with your gut feeling. We had lots of photos from our social worker before we actually had the photos of our sibling group, and it didn't do anything. The only way I would describe it is it's a bit like when you meet your husband or your wife. You know exactly who you're going to fall in love with, and you know whether you like the look of those children or no. And if that feels right, then you go with it. And we did that, and we stuck our feet. We were turned down for our sibling group originally, and then they came back to us because it all fell through. And if it feels right and you think it's right, I would just say go for it. We're dairy farmers, and we're used to all sorts of challenging, dealing with the RPA and DEFRA being one of them. So social services comes, I don't know, 1st, 2nd or 3rd on that list in amongst those 2, but I'm not sure where we put who in what order. The children have settled really, really well. They called us Mummy and Daddy from day one on introductions. We had to do a DVD in a weekend before we went up for introductions, because they wanted the children to be able to see us at home before we actually went and saw them. Because they were, well, our 2 daughters were a lot younger than the boys. It was easier for them if they could sit and watch a DVD, and when we went to meet them for the first time, they were just watching it constantly. Our youngest daughter, we were told, didn't like strangers and didn't take to people, and within 2 minutes she was actually sat on Richard's lap. But he's very good with children anyway. She's definitely Daddy's girl, always has been. When we had to do the storybooks, or photo storybooks for the children before we went to meet them, we had to put in Mummy, Daddy, Granny, Grandad, Nanny, and all the different rest of bits and pieces. And we got a baby calf at home called Rupert, who was a all black calf, beef calf that we'd brought onto the farm, and we told the children that Rupert was actually adopted because he wasn't actually with his real mummy. He was on a foster mummy, or I don't think he was on the bucket. I think we'd actually put him
he was on a cow.
He was actually on a cow, wasn't he?
Lost a calf, wasn't it?
So we turned around and said to the children that Rupert was adopted, and they seemed to sort of accept that. And every time there's a bit on TV about National Adoption Week at tea time, they sit and watch it, and they bring up different things. It's never really seemed to bother about it. They don't really want to talk about it at school, but they never seem to worry about it. It's just they know that I didn't give birth to them, like Rupert's mummy didn't give birth to him, and they just seem to accept it and take it in their stride at the moment. And that's all you can hope for, really. Because of the business that I ran before we had the children, basically a farmhouse guest house, I could sleep anything up to 16 people and was used to doing quite a lot of washing, but it was like 8 by 8 sheets. I think the biggest challenge when they arrived was little pairs of socks and little pairs of pants, and I just gave up hanging out stuff on the line because I was losing it all. It was just so small, it all went in the tumble dryer in the end. And with having 4, it was difficult to work out. Well, the boys' clothes was easy because being twins, they wore each other's. But the girls, there wasn't a great deal between them, but it was just working out whose was whose and what was what. I think it wasn't having the children home and doing meals and all the rest of it, it was sorting out washing. We were told when we had the children that we would not, when we had our children, that we would not be able to cope with our eldest daughter. We were told that an experienced foster parent wasn't able to cope with her and found her extremely challenging. She was 3 when we had her, she's now 10. Yeah, she can be a monkey, but she's a child, she's not a monster, which we were sort of led to believe. You have to remember that they are children. People will tell you all sorts to actually find out how determined you are and whether you actually mean to do what you're hoping to do. And just focus on the children all the time and think of the difference you're going to make to their lives when they arrive.
You have to read between the lines what it says about the children, because they try to almost paint a worst case scenario, so you have to look through that and think, well, they are not as bad as what they make them out to be.
Before we had them, they hadn't been out much outdoor space and that. They weren't all in one foster family. Our youngest daughter was with one set of foster parents and our older 3 children were somewhere else. And one family went out and about quite a bit and went everywhere, and the other family didn't do nowhere near so much, and their garden wasn't lawn, it was chippings.
Got weekends away to Wales in a caravan.
They used to go to the beach quite a bit for holidays and things, and spend a lot of time there, and I think that was more their outer space. But when they were back at home, they hadn't got so much ability to go out and about as when they were away. No, they don't have any contact whatsoever. We do a letter once a year, letterbox once a year, and that's about it, really. They don't even mention their foster parents now. At one time we were going through a phase of, we do this with mummy and daddy, but we never did this with so-and-so, which was their foster parents, and it was getting to it's sort of a bit like, oh, here we go again, they've done something else, but they hadn't done that before, you know. Children began to find it very noticeable that it was very different where they were now to where they had been. But before we had them, they didn't even sit to a table for meals. They sat cross-legged on the floor in front of the telly, and we'd had them home 3 days before we had our first visit from social services to make sure that they were okay, because you have to have a visit within so many days of the children coming home. And they were sat to table with a knife and fork, and they weren't wheezing because they were in a smoke. The foster parents all smoked,
Well, yeah.
which I don't think is allowed to happen
No, it's
now.
not allowed now.
And social workers just said they were very different children in 3 days. They were very, very surprised. And we just felt they'd always just meant to be our family, and it was the right thing to do. The number never really occurred to us. It was just we thought they were the right children, and that was the end of it. And we just got on with it. And at one stage, it was a bit like pushing water uphill, but we got there. Don't think it's going to be a walk in the park, and don't think it's necessarily be easy. But just remember that nothing in life that's ever worth having is ever easy. Be determined, keep sight of your goals, and keep it in focus and go for it. We don't regret doing it, and we got 4.
But there won't be any difference between adopted children, and naturally they'll still have the same. You can still have the same issues. You know, they'll say, oh, they'll be they're not so well behaved, whatever. But that could be with any child. So it's only how you brought them up, not how they arrived.
We could have had our own birth children, and we could have had any amount of problems. Families will tell you, ask anybody at school, your own birth children are not necessarily a walk in the park. Your children will be what you make them. You know, I just say to people, I had all the gain without the pain, because I didn't actually give birth to mine. They're still our children, but they just arrived differently. That's the way we look at it anyway.